Thank you for joining us today for the U.S. Department of Energy Slow Decathlon 2021 Design Challenge, Organize Your Design Portfolio. Today with me, I have Holly Carr, Acting Slow Decathlon Director from the U.S. Department of Energy. Myself, I'm Rachel Romero, the Design Challenge Competition Manager from NREL. And I have with me also Zachary Peterson, Design Challenge Assistant Competition Manager from NREL. Today, we will be going over how you organize your design portfolio and some competition event details. And we look forward to your questions on this webinar. So with that, I'll introduce our Slow Decathlon Director, Holly Carr. Holly?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. And we would just like to take a step back here and recognize all of the incredible work that you have already done up until this point. If we can move to the next slide, we'll take a detailed look at your accomplishments so far between applying for the 2021 Design Challenge and today. You have already accomplished so much here between putting together your design package, working with an interdisciplinary team, working with your faculty member, working on your building science education courses. A lot has happened, and you really have a lot to be proud of today, let alone come April of 2021. Next slide, please. So remember, you've applied new skills from our building science education program and from your faculty and coursework. You've collaborated with a pretty large team, in some cases, really learning to work just like you will in the real world when you're out there designing professionally. You've learned to work with architects and engineers and other professions on a single design. You've really started at this point to develop a visionary design for a zero energy building. And you've prepared this package that you have already submitted to the folks at NREL for review. Next slide, please. And there's more. So between now and April 15th through the 18th, you'll be finishing your designs. You'll be finishing presentations and putting all of these materials together and really completing your design package. And all of you will have available to you during competition weekend opportunities to network and to present to national experts. You'll be able to meet with and listen to insights from our thought leader presenters and really have an opportunity to make connections for your careers moving forward. You'll also see each other's designs and be able to share ideas with one another. And there will be hundreds of you virtually over that weekend. And then, of course, the recognition. So we are excited because there's so much more left for you to experience in this competition. Next slide, please. And we're excited because you really are the future of this industry. And you know, our little tagline is building the next generation, but it's so true. It's really all about you all and the skills that you're going to be bringing to this next generation of buildings. We're so excited that you all are learning these things, that you're bringing the enthusiasm that you are to this program and to the industry, and that you're going to be taking that out into the real world designs and projects that you work on in the years to come. So I hope that you are sharing our excitement for you and the next few weeks of the competition and the future of our industry. Back over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Holly. So with that great introduction, we will jump right in and talk about the nitty-gritty details of the final deliverable that you all are probably working on, the design portfolio. So this slide here shows a big picture of what you've accomplished and what's still to come. So the next deliverable is due March 30th, and this is the design portfolio. So hopefully you are hard at work thinking about how that all comes together. To provide a little bit of context, you've already completed project pitch and the project proposal and submitted those. You got feedback during the project proposal phase. And with this next submission, the design portfolio, there are a couple key elements that that you will need to submit. And in the design challenge, documentation is vital to convey your design to the organizers and the jurors. And we just want to provide a little bit of background and clarity about these as you're completing them. And please note, if you are looking at documents from past winners, that the project submissions have changed a little bit for this year. So please follow the instructions for this year's competition rules. So the design portfolio has two components in a way that you can think of it. So the parts that are due on March 30th are an updated project summary. This is a short document, 2 pages, a longer design narrative document, which is up to 60 pages, project images, and an optional supplemental documentation. And so these items should all be submitted through the project site by March 30th. And the second component of this broader design portfolio are the project presentations, which is a 20-minute presentation recording, as well as the presentation slides, which is for this 8-minute live presentation you'll be giving. And those are due at a later time through Box. So the project summary, teams should update the project summary from previous submissions. And so the real purpose of this project summary is to be a standalone document providing a high-level description of the context, the goals, the highlights of your project, and the key data. And so think about it in this way. If you win, this will be shared over and over and over as a summary of the winning design by the organizers. And so you need to communicate in that project summary the key components. It's in some ways your project's elevator pitch. And past project summaries can be viewed on our website, provided on the project site. The links provided on the project site. And we do provide a template, which you can use to replace the filler text that's in there for your content. And you're of course welcome to reformat that document as you see fit, based on your creativity for your team. But we do provide that template if you would like it. We also provide an example of a project summary that we've created for the NREL RSF facility. And so you can kind of see what we're looking for there, the key information we're looking for there. And that is also available on the project site. So let's talk about the design narrative. This is the real meat and potatoes of the design portfolio, and it should provide a cohesive narrative describing all aspects of the design project, specifically addressing each design decision and all of the contest criteria in detail. The design narrative is the final written deliverable that will showcase all of the hard work your team has poured into this design project. And this is where you put all the cards on the table. And you need to talk about each design component and tie it back to, tie the constraints back to the design decisions you made, and talk about how it impacts the occupants and surrounding community. And a good design narrative is clear, it's succinct, and it has a balance of image and text that attracts the eye. And images are described and graphics are explained in the context. And so it should really highlight all of the design considerations for your project and explain those in a clear and concise way. In terms of formatting, the design narrative follows formatting requirements that we've seen throughout the design challenge. And so you can see those here. Those are also in the design challenge rules. Key things to note: standard paper size and formatting. We want you to follow these to make sure that the jurors who are reviewing these, reviewing 60-page reports from 10 teams, has something that's easy to follow and easy to review. And so please make sure you're following these formatting requirements. Another big one to note is that the design narrative is a single bookmarked PDF. So it's all one PDF document. So in terms of content, the design narrative, you are allotted 27 pages for the contest narratives, up to 4 pages for the design constraints and goals, and then you have the front matter at the top. So keep in mind that the front matter isn't included in this total 60-page count, but these pages should give you as much as you need to fully cover these topic areas in detail. And make sure that you, for instance, in the contest narratives are really digging into the contest and explaining how your design addresses each contest, because you'll be evaluated across all of these. In addition, you are provided several up to 25 pages of appendices. So this could be things like the design renderings, the construction documentation, and so this is floor plans, schedules, mechanical schedules or lighting schedules, details, especially details explaining or highlighting the building science control layers that you've outlined in your designs. And so the design narrative should include the separate appendices and provide additional context to your design and the building science strategies that you included. And, oh, excuse me. So there is the last appendices here is about energy performance. And so you have up to 4 additional pages for that as well. And so this section should really highlight how your design is meeting a zero energy ready target, and in providing the necessary information to validate that you have done the calculations on your end, and you have integrated everything into a design that can, that even though it is a design scale, it's still validated that it is reaching this zero energy target. And so for residential divisions, you'll be demonstrating this through a HERS score, and then for commercial divisions, you'll be calculating an EUI and documenting that here. So of course, refer to section 6.3.2, the design challenge rules, for all of this information, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. So we have also provided an optional template for the design narrative if you'd like to use it. This is provided on the project site. This basically just provides a starting point for completing your design narrative as part of the design portfolio deliverable. And you can really, we encourage you to be creative, and feel free to change the backgrounds or not use them at all. And it really is supposed to set you up so you can provide all of the required content, and make sure that you are providing the required information as well. So please check that out if you'd like a starting point for that. As I mentioned earlier, this should be a bookmarked PDF. And if you're not familiar with what that is, there are instructions on the project site under the quick links. And you can see the example project summary that we posted actually shows you what this looks like. And this is really to help ensure your submissions qualify and are presented in a clear way that a reviewer can work through it and see the headlines, or the titles rather, and help navigate your big documents quickly and efficiently. So we also want to mention file naming. This is a pretty important aspect of the submitting the deliverables as well. It helps us make sure we're looking at the right deliverable for the right team. And so these are provided in the design challenge rules as well. But as an example, so a design challenge team that's competing in the attached housing division, and using the same example that we used for our project summary from the South Table Mountain University, their short name would be STM, and they're submitting the design narrative on March 30th. And so under those assumptions, this is how they would write out their file name before submitting it of their design narrative. So please take a look at that. Reference the Collegiate short names document on the project site, see what your short name is, and please name your files correctly before submitting them. So I just mentioned this, the Collegiate short names list, it is on the project site, and it basically just provides all the short names that we're looking for each of the universities. And it helps us keep track of the teams and the submissions. So please take a look at that and note that these short names could be different than what you would traditionally use as your institution's traditional short name. But this is, again, for the organizer side of things to help keep track of all the submissions. So let's talk a little bit about the project images. And so in addition to the written design portfolio documents, we require teams to provide high quality, clean project images, and we'll use these images in the competition event and materials to showcase each of the teams. We use them in outreach materials and on the website and things like that. And so the requirement is for the teams to submit at least one team photo, and you can be creative. We recognize that people are most likely not physically together. So feel free to be creative. We just want to be able to see the team members' faces. And in addition, we need 2 other images that could be other media that best represents your project. So it could be a design rendering or a photograph of a scale model, anything like that to help represent your project. And of course, be creative, be professional though, and make sure they're clean images. And you know what, if there's great stuff that we've seen, like the one seen on the screen here. And so just make sure you're thinking this through, and that these images are representative of your project. Here are some of on the screen, there's some of the formatting requirements for those. So please take a look at those. Those are also in the rules, and let us know if you have any questions there. So the supplemental documentation, this is an optional document that the teams can submit, and it helps support the design narrative. So it can provide more context about the design goals or the materials in the design narrative. And this is really somewhere where you put all the very detailed, in the weeds information, calculations, for instance, for that helps support your project. And so while everything that all the supporting information should be in the design narrative, if there's additional things like spec sheets or things like that you think are helpful, that you would want to put those in the supplemental documentation. And so you can see some examples here on the screen, and as well as the formatting requirements for these. But please note that the jurors are only required to review the design narrative. And so those already are 60-page documents that they have to work through 10 of. And so they may or may not look at the supplemental documentation. So you want to make sure all of your everything that's needed to support your design argument is in that design narrative, because the jurors may not even get to the supplemental documentation. So the presentation recording, this is basically the design showstopper. This is where your team can really showcase what's important, what are the critical design aspects, and tie all of the components of the design back into one cohesive presentation. And this is a chance for your team to explain the most important design components that you won't have time to talk about in your shorter 8-minute division presentation. The base expectation here is that it's just a slideshow and you have audio narration on top of it. That's completely fine. That's a good baseline to be at. But we of course encourage you to be creative and think outside of the box and think about a creative way to keep people's attention while explaining all of the key pieces of your design here. And we encourage you to check out some of the examples seen from last year on the Solar Decathlon YouTube channel. And so the requirements of that are seen here. The maximum length is 20 minutes. If it's longer than that, we will snip that and it won't look like a complete document. There's several file type options there and some content requirements as well for that. So we look forward to seeing those. Those will be provided to the jurors in advance of the competition event to review and get a better idea of what your design looks like. So file submission. All of the bulk of the design portfolio materials are submitted via the project site. We encourage you to submit early to ensure that we receive everything. The site does lock at the deadline. And so you want to make sure you have everything you need in that submission form on the project site and all of your deliverables uploaded, because it can take a long time to upload some of these large files sometimes. And maybe even you can submit multiple times. So maybe even try submitting in advance and then resubmitting on your final submission. And let us know if you have any issues, of course. But we want you to fill out all the information that's required on the project site submission form and make sure you're doing this well in advance so you don't run into any last minute issues. So there are a lot of pieces of feedback that we have for teams and you'll receive more information about those, but we did want to call out a few things, a few common themes that we've seen over the years and this year as well that we want to make sure we clarify. So the project summary, this should be a standalone document. It should be something that we can share that captures the high level project highlights. Make sure that if you need a starting point, you take advantage of the template that's provided. Make sure before you are submitting the documents, the deliverables, that you are filling out the submission form in the project site completely, and you are referencing this with the rules as well. And when you're in that submission form, keep in mind that when you check the boxes in those submission forms, for instance, that talk about the submission formatting, you are acknowledging that you have met those requirements. And so that helps us on our end for reviewing. Make sure you are clearly including your institution name and division on your deliverables at the top of that cover page, so we can very clearly and easily identify which teams are which. We encourage you to use the full number of pages that you're allotted. We of course want you to be concise. We don't want you to put words down if they don't add value, but that number of pages is there because we think that's the appropriate amount of space to fully communicate and fully provide all the details you need to the jurors. So another thing, we want to make sure you are clearly stating how your submission is meeting the competition requirements, including the division definitions and the competition criteria. And so this should be clearly and explicitly provided, so the jurors have no confusion about whether or not your design fits the requirements and is successfully competing in all of the contest criteria. And successful teams will demonstrate a strong understanding in every contest area. And so they'll demonstrate this strong understanding, and they'll also demonstrate their diversity and innovation in terms of the design and technological choices based on the building's location. Don't forget resilience here. This is that's a contest that can sometimes be overlooked, but it's a very important aspect of the building. So based on what we've seen, we just want to remind people to think about resilience and incorporate that into the design. And then lastly, we just want to say that when you're in the real world and you have a publication, this is typically reviewed by several different parties. So for instance, when we at NREL, before we release a publication, we have it peer reviewed, we pass it around, we circulate it with others in our organization and outside of our organization even, to review it and provide feedback. And so that's the level, that's the caliber of submission we're expecting here, or that's a caliber that we see the finalists come away with. And so take time to complete your complete your design narrative and have an opportunity for reviewers to work through it and provide you feedback so you can update it. And that's going to set you up to be successful. And so those are the key pieces of feedback. Of course, continue to communicate with the organizers and let us know what questions you have. But with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel to talk more about how things will be evaluated.
Great. So now that you've submitted all of this, we want to talk a little bit about the evaluation process to help you understand what's happening on the other side. So you've now submitted your design portfolio. What's going to happen is our division jurors are going to do a preliminary review of the design portfolio that you've submitted. They're also going to take a look at that recorded presentation before the competition event. So they're coming into the competition event with quite a bit of information about your team. They may have pre-scored you, and they may have put together some questions that they're interested in asking you. Then your team will put together a division presentation, and then so you'll present that to your division jurors, help remind them what your project is. And then you're going to have this Q&A. That Q&A is really important for our jurors. Our teams find it really valuable. So that's an important part of the process. Then our division jurors will select division winners based on all of this information. So on the next slide, we are going to just peek at what the jurors see. So the jurors see, they'll see 10 submissions in your division, up to 10 submissions. And then what they'll do is they have a submission form that looks very similar to what you have. So you'll notice that the picture is kind of important. It helps them have a visual identity with what your project is. So consider putting something interesting, valuable there. They will see that you've checked all the boxes or not, and then they will see your documentation, and below that they'll have a scorecard with their score for you. So on the next slide, let's talk about your presentations. Okay, so there are 2 presentations. First is your 20-minute recorded presentation that is due on April 6th. The jurors will have reviewed that before the competition event. Also, I'd like to note that we did share a lot of our recorded presentations last year, saw a lot of great creativity and interesting presentations, and those were great to share. So you can see those, as Zach mentioned, on our Solo Decathlon YouTube site. Additionally, you're going to give an 8-minute live presentation via Zoom during the competition event to your live panel of jurors. Division winners will then present those same slides again on Sunday to the grand jurors. So if you win first place in your division, you'll be given about an hour to practice and check in with the organizers, and then you will be presenting in front of all of the Solar Decathlon competition participants to compete for grand winner within your building type. So a good tip here is design is only good as the presentation. So please practice, practice, practice. You can definitely tell which teams are polished and have practiced. It's an important part for telling the story that you have created for your design. So on the next slide, we'll talk about the competition awards. So as a reminder, we're giving away first, second, and third place winners for each division. So we have 7 divisions, so we will have 7 first place teams. Each of those first place teams will then get to compete for that grand winner award. We have suburban single family, urban single family, and attached housing will compete for that grand residential winner, grand winner residential, and elementary school, office, mixed use, multifamily, and retail will be competing for the commercial grand winner trophies. Next slide. So now what do you need to do? Keep going. We want to encourage you to keep working. Act like you are already a grand winner. People with confidence and know that they need to put the work in to compete are winners already. So as Zach mentioned, ask your peers and your industry partners and your advisors to review your design portfolio and incorporate the feedback that's given to you by our reviewers. Make sure that you review it and review it and review it again before it gets submitted. Submit the design portfolio project deliverable via the project site by March 30th at 5 p.m. Submit it early. Hint, hint. Early submissions, teams feel confident in what they've submitted and ensure that sometimes these large documents and files are submitted on time. And then practice your division presentation. You're going to be live in front of the jurors and your other peers, and we want to ensure that you have a great experience for that. So at this time, we'd now like to go to the next slide and hope that you will share your team progress. In the slides will be a link to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Flickr. So please share your team progress. We'd love to see your posts. You can use the hashtag #SolarDecathlonDesign. Next slide. We'd like to thank our 2021 Design Challenge sponsors. Without them, this event would just not be the same. They are super supportive of our students. They want to stand beside you as you become the next generation of the building's workforce. So with that, thank you and good luck. We wish you the best of luck as you finish out this competition, and thank you for participating. We'd be happy to take your questions at any time at sddesign@nrel.gov, and we'll see you at the next Design Challenge check-in.